It was Thursday morning on February 21st, 2008, in Barcelona. A cleaning lady let herself into the short-term rental apartment, ready for work. Just a standard routine. But the moment she stepped into that living room, she froze. This wasn't standard. This was a nightmare. A woman lay naked and motionless on the sofa. And over her head was a plastic bag, secured tight around the neck with an elastic cord. Too terrified to get any closer, the cleaner did the only thing she could. She steadied herself, called the police, and then called the landlord. You know, some crime scenes are messy and chaotic things. There's blood on the walls, signs of a struggle, the story of what happened screaming at you from the scene. But others, well, some others are quiet, with an unknown victim, but they're screaming for justice and begging to be solved. And in many ways, it makes them so much worse. When officers arrived, they confirmed the worst. The woman was deceased. No visible injuries, no signs of a fight, just that bag, suggesting death by asphyxiation. But the question lingering on everyone's minds, was this self-inflicted, or was it homicide? The scene whispered that at least 2 people had been there. The victim's clothing was gone, vanished. All that was left near the sofa was a pair of black knee-high leather boots and a shoulder-length black wig, a set of earrings and a necklace. No purse, no ID, nothing to tell them who she was. The rest of the apartment was just as clean, just as empty. Just 2 clues: a half-empty beverage bottle and a single cup on the dining table. The landlord told the police that the apartment had been rented from February 18th to the 20th by a woman named Ana Páez, 35 years old. The name on the payment receipt matched. He described the renter as tall, slender, around 40, with medium-length black hair. He never realized it was a wig. But when they showed him the body, he was certain the victim was not his tenant. He'd never seen her before in his life. So, who was she? And where was the woman who rented this apartment? 3 days later, on February 24th, a missing persons report finally gave them a name. A man named Carlos Carbajo had reported his wife, Ana, missing after she had vanished on the night of the 18th. The name matched the landlord's tenant. The photos Carlos provided matched the victim's description. After a painful viewing, Carlos identified the body. It was his wife. It was Ana. But if it was Ana on the sofa, then who the hell rented the apartment? Now you've got a victim, a name, Ana, a fashion designer at a local multinational textile firm, married for 7 years, described by everyone who knew her as straightforward, optimistic, warm-hearted, the kind of person who was planning her first child, not some sordid end on a rental apartment sofa. The police needed to figure out how she got there. The autopsy results came back. No poison, no sedatives. Time of death, estimated just after midnight on February 19th. The cause of death, asphyxiation. Then, the forensics team found something else. Male DNA from 2 unidentified individuals. But neither sample matched anyone in the national database, a dead end, and this DNA was found inside her mouth and her other private area. And remember what I said about messy crime scenes? Well, this was the opposite. The apartment was clean. I mean clean. Wiped down every surface, furniture, cabinets, sink, the beverage bottle, the plastic cup, all of it sanitized. There were no prints, no other DNA. The plastic bag and the elastic cord were common, untraceable. And then there was no forced entry. It was like a ghost did it and just placed her there. So theories started to form. Maybe this was a sensual thing gone wrong. Asphyxiation play taken too far? Maybe. And these 2 guys, whoever they were, panicked. They cleaned it up, took her clothes and lay her there, and then vanished into the night. But Ana's family, they shot down the theory in flames. Carlos insisted his wife would never cheat, let alone get involved with 2 men. She'd called him on the afternoon on the 18th, said she was having dinner with a friend and a former colleague, a woman named María Ángeles Molina. Everyone called her Angi. When Ana didn't come home that night, Carlos figured she just crashed at Angi's place. But the next day, her phone was off. She didn't show up for work, and that's when he reported her missing. Ana's brother Tony backed it up. He'd spoken to his sister around noon on the 18th. She'd mentioned that dinner with Angi. Police checked the phone records. A call from Angi to Ana at 7:30 p.m. that evening confirmed it. So now that it seems that Angi was the last person to see Ana alive, that's her only lead. They tracked her down for questioning. And let me tell you, what she gave them was a story that changed everything. Angi claimed that dinner was just a cover that Ana used for her husband and brother. The real plans, she said, were for a different kind of meeting entirely. Said she didn't know who Ana was really meeting, but her intuition said it was a man. Why else would Ana need to lie? Then she took it a step further. She served up this bombshell. The persona that Ana showed her family, it was a facade. In her opinion, Ana was a woman with two faces, living two completely separate lives. It fit the police's theory perfectly, but to her family, it was a monstrous lie. They knew Ana. They knew her heart. Things weren't adding up. And the investigators, they had a hunch too. Something about this was off. They had to go back to the beginning to take a closer look. Because if Angi was lying, they were about to find out. And the truth was so much darker than anyone could have imagined. You see, in any investigation, there's always a moment, a single tiny detail that doesn't fit, a crack in the story. And for the Barcelona police, that crack was Ana's bank account, the one used to pay for the rental. They were reviewing the transaction records, just routine stuff, when they found it. On the morning of February 18th, around 9 a.m., someone had withdrawn 600 euros in cash from the ATM using Ana's account. Now think about the timing. A Monday morning. Multiple colleagues confirmed Ana was in meetings at her office from 9 a.m. until noon. She never left. So who made those withdrawals? It couldn't have been Ana. This was it. The break they needed. They pulled the security footage from the bank. The person on that tape matched the landlord's description of the renter. And when they showed a still from that ATM camera to the landlord, he didn't hesitate. That's her, he said. That's the woman who rented the apartment. But then they showed some grainy image to Carlos, the husband. And his reaction was like a punch to the gut. He knew that face. It was Angi. She was wearing a wig, but it was her. And then it clicked. The black shoulder-length wig on the sofa at the crime scene, it was identical to the one in the bank footage. The pieces were crashing together. Ana's identity had been stolen, and the person behind it all was her friend. The last person anyone would have suspected. They dug into Angi's background. 40 years old, fired from her job as an HR manager at Ana's company just before the incident. And get this, her old job in HR gave her privileged access to the personal data of every employee, including Ana's. She had the perfect means. She had the opportunity. But what was the motive? Why would a friend do this? The answer was about to come, and it was more cold-blooded than anyone could have imagined. You see, Angi lived a life that didn't add up. Carlos had always wondered about it. She lived in a large villa, drove a Porsche 911, wore head-to-toe Dior, carried a Hermes Birkin bag, but her old salary as an HR manager? Maybe a little over 3,000 euros a month. The math was a fantasy. The money had to be coming from somewhere else. And oh, was it ever. The police followed the money, and what they found was a web of fraud so brazen, so calculated, it was almost impressive. Between April 2006 and November 2007, someone had taken 4 separate loans in Ana's name. The total, 102,400 euros. and the guarantor for all of them, Angi's wealthy businessman boyfriend. But the loans were just the beginning. The real prize was even more sinister. Someone, using Ana's stolen identity, had also taken out 10 separate life insurance policies in her name. And the combined payout if Ana died? A cool 840,000 euros. The beneficiary for all 10 policies was a woman they called Miss A. At first, she seemed like a ghost. No connection to Ana, no connection to Angi. But the account where the money was supposed to go? Well, police pulled the security footage. The primary user was Angi. So how did she pull that off? Miss A recalled losing her ID card over a year ago in the very building where Angi and Ana had worked. The theory was simple. Angi stole it and found it and kept it. A perfect, untraceable alias to collect a blood money payout. A handwriting expert confirmed it. Every signature on those loan and insurance applications, all forged by the same hand. And that handwriting showed striking similarities to Angi's own. The motive was now clear. Greed. This wasn't a crime of passion. It was a business plan. Angi had stolen Ana's identity to fund a lavish lifestyle, and the most profitable part of the plan required Ana to die. The stage scene, the sensual implications, the cleaned apartment, it was all a setup, a deliberate attempt to make a murder look like a tragic accident so she could cash in. But to pull it all off, she needed an alibi, and hers was about to fall apart. Every killer likes to have an alibi, and Angi's was a work of art. She told police that on February 18th, the day of the murder, she'd left Barcelona early in the morning. She'd driven to her hometown in Zaragoza, a 5-hour round trip to retrieve her mother's ashes from the columbarium there. Her mother had passed away a year ago. She claimed she was traveling all day and didn't get home till 10 p.m. and that she never left her home. It was a solid story, respectful, plausible. But the police were skeptical. They did what good investigators do. They checked. They went to that columbarium in Zaragoza. The access logs meticulously documented everything. Angi had arrived at just after 1 p.m. She was there for less than 10 minutes before leaving with the urn. Doing the math, they put her back in Barcelona no later than 4 p.m. Plenty of time before a typical Spanish dinner to keep her appointment with Ana. But if this wasn't enough, the police had an even more precise tool: her cell phone records. They showed a call from Ana Páez to Molina's phone at 8 p.m. that evening. According to Angi's story, she was returning from Zaragoza after lunch with friends and collecting her mother's ashes. But at 8 p.m., the call placed her phone squarely in Barcelona, not some highway, according to her story. Her own alibi was now crushing due to her own mouth. She claimed that after getting back, she went to buy a Cartier watch for her then boyfriend, but police evidence placed her cell phone at 9 p.m., just 300 meters from the apartment where Ana's body would later be found. Even her ex-boyfriend's statement worked against her. He told investigators that Angi arrived home at 10:30 p.m., explaining that she damaged her car at a gas station because she forgot to remove the hose. It was weird, unnecessary detail that sounded less like an alibi and more like a panicked excuse for where she'd been. The alibi didn't just have a few holes, it was the literal equivalent of Swiss cheese. Angi was in the city. Angi had the time. Angi had the motive. With this, the prosecutors got their search warrant, and what they found in Angi's home wasn't just evidence, it was a confession in the form of various objects. A bottle of chloroform, a colorless, sweet-smelling liquid that causes unconsciousness and respiratory paralysis within minutes, a substance that evaporates without a trace, explaining why the autopsy found nothing, multiple bank cards in Ana's name, the original ID of Miss A, an auburn-colored wig likely used to impersonate Miss A. But the most damning evidence was on her computer. internet searches from before the murder. How to anesthetize an animal. Addresses of foreign male escorts in Barcelona. They followed that last search, and at one agency, a man came forward. He stated a woman calling herself Ana had recently paid him and a colleague €100 each. But get this, there was nothing physical involved with the woman. Quite the opposite. The woman simply wanted to collect their male fluids, if you know what I mean. And DNA testing confirmed it. These were the two men whose bodily fluids were found inside Ana. And when shown a photo, both escorts pointed to the same woman. It was Angi who hired them. The pieces were finally there. The chloroform to subdue Ana, the rented apartment as the stage, and the purchased bodily fluids to plant as evidence. She cleaned the scene to erase herself, the lies to the police to smear Ana's character. It was the perfect plan, meticulous, cold. But perfect plans have one weakness. The person who makes them always thinks they're the smartest person in the room, and that arrogance, it always leaves a trace. And you think one twisted story is enough? Think again, because when the police searched Angi's home, they found something that blew the lid off a cold case over a decade old. Hidden in a backpack behind a toilet was a man's watch and a man's leather wallet. Inside were the ID documents for an Argentine man named Juan Antonio Alvarez. The name rang a bell to everyone who knew Angi. After all, this was Angi's late husband, the one she claimed had died by offing himself back in 1996, leaving her a vast fortune of over €2 million, the foundation of her lavish lifestyle. Juan's family and friends had accused Angi of his murder years ago. Now, with his wallet found and in her possession, police reopened that file. The story they uncovered was chillingly familiar. In the months before his death, Juan had decided to divorce Angi. He was done with her lying and her compulsive spending. He demanded she leave with nothing and planned to fight for full custody of their young daughter. On November 22, 1996, Juan was found unconscious on the bedroom floor of their villa in Palma de Mallorca. Paramedics pronounced him dead at the scene. The official autopsy? Iron phosphate poisoning, a toxic compound found in fertilizers and cleaning products. No evidence Juan ever bought such a thing. There were no break-ins, nothing stolen. The only thing missing was his wallet. The police ruled it self-inflicted. A man, they said, despondent over his failing marriage, did it to himself. But his family knew better. They described a disciplined, athletic businessman, a devoted father who had everything to live for. They pointed to the facts. And just 2 months before he passed away, Angi had enrolled their daughter in a school in Barcelona for the new year, a move Juan's family knew nothing about. Since that summer, Angi had been having an affair with a chemical engineer, a potential source for that untraceable poison. Angi had left Palma for Barcelona just 2 days before Juan's death, returning the day after he died. A perfect, calculated alibi. The live-in maid recalled Angi calling every 1 to 2 hours that day, persistently asking about Juan's condition, specifically urging her to check on him after his shower. It was only after this urging that the maid found him. And to no surprise now, Angi had taken out a life insurance policy on Juan that fall. The day after returning to Palma, she visited the insurance company to inquire about the claim. However, they denied. She didn't read the fine print. Self-inflicted injuries voided the insurance policy. But she didn't need the insurance. As his widow, she inherited everything. His businesses, his villa, his cash. She sold it all off, kept the villa for rental income, and moved to Barcelona to start her new, wealthy life. The discovery of the wallet suggested a terrifying theory. She stole it to stage a robbery, to make his death look like a homicide so she could collect the insurance. But the plan went sideways when the police called it a self-inflicted death. In 2010, pressured by Juan's family, Parma police decided to reopen the case, but it was too late. Juan's remains couldn't be retested. The chemical engineer had vanished, and the case went stone cold dead. 2 deaths, 2 elaborate schemes, 1 common thread. It was a pattern of pure, calculated evil, and it was about to meet its judgment. To understand a monster, you have to look where it came from. And the psychological profile the police built on Angi was a picture of a perfect psychopath. Intelligent, charming when she needed to be, but utterly cold, completely calculating, and devoid of empathy. Her story started in a small town of just 2,500 people on the outskirts of Zaragoza. A taxi driver's daughter, an only child, doted on by her parents. They spoiled her, indulged her every desire with their modest means, and it created something rotten, a spoiled, selfish, and deeply narcissistic character. At 15, she left for Barcelona and was introduced to the world of high-end escorting. She was pretty, sharp-witted, and had a talent for reading people. She quickly built a roster of wealthy, generous clients. A former colleague at the time said it plainly. Angi had no real affection for anyone. She was materialistic, vain, shrewd, and self-centered. She was passionately devoted to making money to fund a luxurious lifestyle that included several international vacations a year. It was on one of those trips that she met Juan, the 34-year-old Argentine businessman in Palma de Mallorca. After discreetly checking his background, she pursued him, and she crafted an elaborate lie. She told him she was the only daughter of nobility, her father a count, the family owned vast estates, her the sole beneficiary of a massive trust fund. She was manipulating him, making him believe her interest was genuine, not financial. He fell for it. He fell hard. His friends warned him. The 14-year age gap, her manners often seemed crass and vulgar for supposed aristocracy, but he chose her. The truth came out when he insisted on meeting her parents before proposing. She came clean. No title, no estate, no trust fund. Just a taxi driver from a small town. Juan was furious, ready to call it off. But his father persuaded him to forgive her, and the wedding went ahead. For a while, there was peace. They had a daughter, but the facade began to crack. Angi's spending was pathological. She filled rooms with luxury goods she never used. She was a regular at casinos, losing fortunes. Juan's pleas for responsibility were met with rage, and she kept finding excuses to spend weeks at a time in Barcelona. Growing suspicious, Juan hired a private investigator. The report was devastating. Angi had never stopped working as a high-end escort. Worse, she was blackmailing clients, threatening to expose their affairs to extract money. The report included photos of her with various men. Juan was shattered. He demanded a divorce. He told her she would leave with nothing. He would fight for full custody, and if she resisted, he'd use the detective's reports and photos in court. According to Juan's sister, Angi tried to placate him, but he was resolute. She believes Angi learned of his plans and began to plot. The life insurance policy she took out on him that fall wasn't for security. It was an investment, the final part of the plan. She would kill her husband, inherit his estate, and collect the insurance. She would be free, wealthy, and in control. The wallet found behind the toilet years later was the ghost of that plan, a piece of a staged crime scene that never was. Proof that the first death was just as cold and calculated as the second. She thought she'd gotten away with it. She thought she was smarter than everyone, and for over a decade, she was. But that arrogance, that belief that she could outthink everyone in the room, that was her weakness, and it was about to send her away for good. The case against Angi for Anna's murder was a lock. Motive, means, opportunity, and a mountain of physical evidence. The trial commenced in 2012.
May that damn woman rot in jail and never get out. That's all I wish for.
Did you kill Ana Páez?
No. According to the prosecution, she invited the victim to dinner at this apartment, drugged her, and suffocated her with a bag.
A bottle of chloroform was found. What did you use the chloroform for?
My daughter told me she had to do an experiment with a rabbit.
Then she pretended
The court found her guilty on all counts, murder and forgery. She was sentenced to 18 years for the murder and 4 years for the forgery, a total of 22 years behind bars. She was also ordered to pay 200,000 euros to Ana's family. But a mind like hers doesn't just accept responsibility, and certainly can't accept this judgment. So she appealed. And in June 2013, an appeals court did something controversial. They reduced her sentence from 22 years to 18. The murder charge was lowered from 18 to 14 years. Their reasoning? They argued that Ana, before being subdued, might have had a chance to perceive Angi's malicious intent and failed to resist, that she bore some degree of responsibility for her own fate. Wait, let's sit on that for a moment. The victim shared blame for her own murder because she resisted? I'm sorry, but I cover true crime cases, and this verdict is up there with the most bullshit reasonings I've ever come across. Anyways, let's continue. So Angi went to prison, but the story doesn't end with a cell door closing. In December 2023, and serving over a decade, she was granted second-grade parole, segundo grado. It's allowed her to leave the prison for specific periods, a taste of freedom. Her full sentence was set to expire in 2027. However, a leopard doesn't change its spots. A psychopath doesn't just grow a conscience. During an authorized leave from prison, Angi did what she knew best. She began to plot. According to the reports, she attempted to hire a hitman to carry out another murder. The victim's identity is protected, the details scarce. In March 2025, she was arrested again. The little freedom that she had was snatched back. The legal consequences for the new alleged crime are still pending. El Confidencial reported that she chose not to testify before a judge. One husband, one friend, countless lies. A tale of ruin and death fueled by nothing but pure, insatiable greed. You never really know a person, you know. We all have our secret lives, but for most of us, it's a hidden fear, a private dream. For Angi, it was a monster smart enough to plan the perfect crimes, but arrogant enough to believe she'd never face the consequences. And in the end, that arrogance was her undoing.